I'm Thomas Napper. I'm the director of The Widow Clicquot.
My name is Haley, and I am the producer of Widow Clicquot, and I also star in the film.
Widow Clicquot is the story of one of the founding mothers of modern champagne.
The founding mother.
She was one of the inventors of what we now know as champagne, and among other things, invented branding, global export, and is an iconic figure from French culture and global culture. And it's the story of her life, her early life, counterpointed with her life taking over the vineyard and creating Veuve Clicquot.
I find this a really bold and exciting new chapter starting right here at Toronto Film Festival to premiere this film that means so much to me, something that I developed and something that I brought this film to life. It's from the screen, from a book to the screen and then to life as the character, and I just love the depth in which I can dive into these experiences, and the collaboration aspect, I think, is something that really excites me. And having a vision and speaking to Veuve Clicquot herself, is, she was this visionary woman, and I think that she really inspired me, to do things. She did things her way, despite the fact that she was terrified every step of the way. And I think, that's what makes you strong, and that's what makes you more capable, is to step into the fire, and it's how you go through the fire. And I do think that making films is like walking through the fire. But making up your mind, deciding what projects you want. And also, I think for me, am I talking too much? It came from a necessity, because I want to play fascinating roles. And unfortunately, because of the business model of the industry, it doesn't necessarily always champion new talent, new voices. And so I have just found a path, producing and developing my own projects, that I can, carve out those opportunities for myself. So the book Widow Clicquot is a New York Times bestseller. It's a best-selling biography. And my friend Jackie gave me the book whilst I was shooting Cyrano in Noto, Italy, making Cyrano with Joe, who I also produced this film with. Um, and she said, "You have to play this woman." And I read the book, and I expected champagne and luxury, and what I found was this incredibly real, raw woman was who I could just relate to so much, and that passion that she found, and not um taking no for an answer. And that is kind of what my path was at producing this film, is like, you have to will it into existence, and it's that kind of tenacity that allows you to really break through and break down walls. And I think, in some ways, that's what I'm kind of doing with my producing, is breaking down barriers and not taking no for an answer, and not looking for anybody else's approval. It's like, I'm gonna do it my way, and I don't need anybody to hold my hand to do it. And I think I really feel like I learned something from every character, and I really learned that from Clicquot. It was because she was a widow. It was because she was a woman. It was because she was a young woman. Fortunately, she had the law on her side, because it was a part of the Napoleonic Code. The law allowed widows to run businesses, so she used that to her advantage. But there was a lot of adversity, a lot up against her, and of course, she was also dealing with the grief and the death of her husband Francois, who died very tragically. And I think in my opinion, she kind of blamed herself for that. So I think she was up against self doubt, not only the kind of patriarchy or the patriarchal figures, but I think she was also, and sometimes I think self doubt can be our greatest adversity, because there's these kind of external um the external adversity, and then there's the internal adversity, which are the voices inside of our head that say, give up, don't do it, you're not good enough, you're not talented enough, you don't have the guts, uh let's let a man do it.
We also collaborated on I did a feature doc called Lost Angels, which Joe produced as well, which was about Skid Row in Los Angeles. So we've kind of danced around doing different projects with each other in different roles. And when we started, way back when we started, and I was directing music videos, he was my casting director. So we've kind of had lots of different roles. I was a storyboard artist when he first started making short films. So we've danced around lots of different projects over the years. It's the first time he's produced a narrative fiction, yeah. I've watched Joe working on many films and watched very closely from standing next to him on, I think, 8 films or something. So I've seen Joe working at very close quarters and how he preps. And I think the thing that I have borrowed from him most closely is his diligence in prep, and how he approaches getting ready is sort of astonishing. I mean, he's so prepped before he starts working. So he's very influential to me in every aspect of my filmmaking, no doubt. But we're different in other ways, and we have our own personalities. And I think I'm probably a simpler director in
He's
that.
very gentle, Joe. I've worked with you both.
Worked with both, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Joe is a director on Cyrano, and
Yes.
Thomas as a director on Clicquot,
Yes.
Widow Clicquot, and Joe has made me cry, and you never made me cry. Thank you. But just
Except at the end.
because I think, and I think I'll speak as the actor working with both of you. There's not a choreography to there's not that that's a bad thing. I love kind of mapping out a scene. I really loved mapping out scenes with Joe, but they are very choreographed, which has a beauty to it, and a rhythm that I find really exciting. But I didn't feel that with you. There is a more of a kind of a fluidity, a freedom, a collaboration. Uh, I'm being very careful with my words right now. You're not really on strings, right? Like,
yes, yeah.
We've cut those down, and it's
Freedom.
very collaborative.
It's kind of freedom, I think. But
very much freedom.
I definitely felt coming into Widow Clicquot that it was it had different incarnations as a bigger film that went to Russia and Amsterdam and was global in its intention and focused in part on the war as well. So there were scenes with soldiers and Russian soldiers and various elements. And where the film ended up going and where the film takes us, or the film that was revealed to us while we were editing, was a film that was very contained. And so it becomes a film about Madame Clicquot's life on the farm, the relationship to the vineyard, the house, the warehouse where she tastes, and the work on that takes place in those environments. And we focused very heavily on how to bring the kind of diligence and the work into all of the scenes. So, whatever qualities she has as a business person, and she had many, as a winemaker, she was a super sniffer. She had an incredible nose and was able to discern and to define not only champagne, but also champagne going forward for many, many years. And she was also an inventor. So the process that she invented at the end of the film is how champagne is made today in every champagne house in France. They use the same technique to make every single bottle of wine. Now, that's 220 years later. Imagine inventing something that people use every day in 220 years from now. It's an astonishing ideation. It's an astonishingly original brain that came up with that. And she was in her 20s when she did that. So it's a portrait, not a biography. It's a painting, not a documentary, of an astonishing woman who is iconic. She is a heroine of wine production, and in France, she's a household name for good reason, I think.